Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next City of Echoes chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 28, 29, and 30. Doing 3 of them in this video just because there's a lot of kind of moving around in these chapters. The first chapter here, 28, is actually just quite short in general, but then a lot of it is just kind of describing kind of like Jin moving through the city. So these 3 kind of progresses kind of a lot in that regard, but we can definitely kind of group them up here. Overall, we're approaching the end as well of part 2 of the story, just for anyone kind of keeping track of that. But just before we start, I'll mention I do have YouTube channel membership and Patreon available if you'd like to help support the channel, and also if you come in at the higher tier you'll gain early access to other videos in the series. But we'll jump in here. So chapter 28. So obviously Jin, the invasion has started and some destruction has happened relatively nearby, and this is when Smellerbee comes in kind of screaming like, Jin, Longshot needs help, please. And Jin immediately notes that Smellerbee is distraught, and she doesn't typically see her like this, so she knows something is seriously wrong. I like the description actually at the end of this paragraph here. Her missing half is how they refer to Longshot. That's how kind of they're always together. And across these chapters, this is an interesting one because we see the kind of closeness of these two, but they never quite go as far as to like confirm that the two of them are like in a romantic relationship. It's an interesting one because it is a ship within the fandom in the sense of like it's not just a kind of theoretical ship. It's kind of like there, but they've never fully confirmed that it is actually like a relationship in that sense. So it's an interesting one that they never maybe go as far as to just say it, but you get the closeness and you could actually see it if that was the direction that they went in to ever confirm it. But anyway, so yeah, Jin is like, okay, I'm needed. She just tells Gong Gong to kind of like, you know, stay here, stay in the apartment. I'll come back for you. Just, you know, I need to do something. So as they make their way kind of through the city back to where it's basically where Smellerbee and Longshot stay, where the kind of like apartment that they're living in, they get to go through some of the streets and they see the destruction here. They note that even though a lot of the stuff is made out of stone, anything that's made out of wood is pretty much on fire. And that's what a lot of the interiors, the like furniture and stuff like that is made out of. A lot of the walkways between the roofs of buildings is made out of wood. So a lot of the city is on fire overall. So, and then they get to the basically destroyed apartment building that was where Smellerbee and Longshot were staying. And Jane is like, Longshot's in there? Like she can't imagine that like someone has survived like something like this. This is where Smellerbee notes that part of the wall fell on him. He's trapped. They kind of make their way in there and they eventually kind of like find him. And thankfully, he's not in like too bad of a situation, but there is a kind of slab of rock from one of the walls kind of pinning him down. And his leg, I think it's his left leg, is kind of the thing that's mainly kind of pinned down. That's where the injury is. So the idea is that Jin is needed as an earthbender to hopefully be able to free Longshot here. So she's learned some moves, but mostly delicate earthbending, and now she's required to do a little bit more kind of heavy lifting earthbending. So can she do it? That's the idea. Just before that, we do get a nice moment between Smellerbee and Longshot where Smellerbee's kind of losing it a little bit, and even though Longshot's the one who's in danger, he kind of calls out to her and is like, Smellerbee, who's kind of sobbing, and he just kind of puts his hand out, and Jin kind of gets the impression the hand is basically saying, come here. She kneels down beside him. Smellerbee holds his hand, and she then starts to kind of like stroke his hair as they kind of prepare for Jin to kind of lift this. And she just knows that like she's surprised at how like Smellerbee can be so tender given that she's so fierce most of the time. It's an interesting description, of course. And she just knows the difference between like, you know, her life even compared to them, where like they have each other, they've had their friends, but like they haven't had family in like a long time. She at least has Gong Gong, and that's why she's kind of doing a lot of this. But yeah, she gets close to what she's trying to move here, tries to sense what she needs to do. It's only like basically a door, a slab. She can do it. So she does eventually manage to do it. They describe it as like when she moves it, it like splits. But she is able to kind of do it in such a way where she kind of gets it out of the way, but she's still holding up quite a heavy weight, and she's just like, pull him out, and Smellerbee quickly manages to get Longshot out. So she's managed to kind of accomplish this. They do get him out. His left leg is the one he can't put any weight on, and they kind of gradually make their way away from there. They begin to go down one alley. People come up and they're like, war machines are coming this way, don't go down that way, so they have to go a different direction. This is where it is noted that there is some sense of people fighting back, because there are boulders being kind of flung all over the place. And the idea is, where did they go? Smellerbee and Longshot, where did they go? Their house basically has collapsed where they were staying, their apartment. And Jin makes the decision that, okay, the only place we're close to, Longshot can't really walk far. Come to my home, there's enough room for all of us there. So she brings her new friends back to her house, and this is where we go into kind of 29. And yeah, they note at the start here that Longshot's injury is not as bad as they kind of thought it was. They initially thought he might have broken his ankle. It turns out it might just be that he twisted it a bit. So it'll still take some recovery time, but it's not like a devastating injury here. So he's managed to get out of this relatively lucky, but he still can't really be active right now, given the kind of craziness that's kind of going on. So yeah, she gets home. They kind of lie Longshot down. They give him a place to kind of elevate his leg so that they can do their best to kind of manage that injury. But then she goes to check on her grandfather, who she's had to leave, of course, to help Smellerbee and Longshot. And this is where we get the kind of shock reveal that he's not doing very well. I don't see him for a moment because he's fallen behind the table. He's half sitting, half lying against the wall. His eyes are open, staring up at the ceiling. There's a piece of red paper clutched to his chest. And the idea is obviously that in the meantime, he has gone outside, checked the notice on the door, which is that the Fire Nation has invaded, basically, and has come back in and had a turn for the worse. Right now, we don't really know what the full situation is, but Jin notes that this is like really, really serious. Like, she can't really get him to respond. He's clearly still alive, but like she's trying to like shake him to kind of get him to respond, and there's nothing. So this is the worst she's ever seen him, basically. And so it's super, super serious. She immediately realizes that she needs to get help. She needs to get a doctor to him immediately. So she has to go out again, and she's decided that she's going to go try and get Dr. John, who of course is Xuan's mother. So she's going to go on her own. Smellerbee is going to look after kind of Longshot, who's injured, but also the Gong Gong, who's in a kind of terrible state as well. And it's just kind of noted here as Jin leaves that like she trusts that Smellerbee will protect everyone there. She'll defend the place with her life, I'm sure. And so yeah, she gets out into the streets here to make her way to the apothecary. This is where she does get her first look at the war machines, which are confirmed to be the Tundra tanks, which of course I suppose the main episode with them is like Northern Air Temple, but you do see them quite a lot in the finale as well. They're pretty cool, war machines here, but in this case, not cool that they're going around bossing Sei, of course. So we get a description of them. She's kind of tries to stay to the rooftops as much, like use the kind of platforms along the tops of buildings to kind of get by as best that she can. Along the way here, she does cut herself on kind of one of the tiles. It doesn't seem to be too bad, but it's noticeable to a certain degree. As she's kind of almost like, they described it as almost like clumsily, desperately making her way, kind of as agile as she can be through the city, she notes the kind of legends surrounding Avatar Kyoshi. So this is where we get effectively a reference to the Kyoshi novels here, where it's revealed here Grandmother Wen would tell us the stories of Avatar Kyoshi. Susu would always be raptured with them. How could an avatar leap over great bounds with her giant feet? It was said her companions were capable of astonishing feats themselves, able to call pillars of earth from nothing so that they could fly above the city, above the crowds, escaping the pull of the earth, and that even the most powerful of earthbenders pull of the earth that even the most powerful earthbenders have to contend with. So a reference to dust stepping, which would be a really cool technique to have for Jin at this point in time, to be able to just super quickly navigate the city, but instead she has to kind of stay off the main streets, kind of go in between alleyways, go over buildings if she can, that sort of idea. A little bit of a kind of side kind of bar here where she thinks about, what's the new Avatar doing? He was at the palace. There was rumors about him being at the palace. What happened? Why is he not around anymore? What happened here? Was he working with the Fire Nation all along? She's thinking like the generals. What are they doing? Were they involved with the betrayal? She's just kind of speculating about how is this all gone so wrong. From there, she eventually makes her way to where the apothecary is, but she realizes, of course, the front doors are shut, and that even though she tries to bang at the door, no one's answering here because they're in full kind of defensive mode. They're not going to let anyone in. They're not going to answer the door until the chaos calms down. But she has to find a way in. This is desperate mode at this point in time. There are vines along the kind of like inner wall. So basically the idea is she climbs up down to get on top of the building. Now it's relatively high up, but then the big question is, how does she get down on the other side? Like into the actual like apothecary sort of like facility basically. So she realizes that like, okay, the vines don't go all the way down on the other side. And it is described that she is like, 2-3 stories up here. So like she can't just like hop down and survive. She doesn't have that kind of like earthbending ability to just like let the impact with the ground, like with her earthbending, take the fall. So she decides that like, oh, I'm gonna have to do something I've never done before, and that's kind of earthbend my way gradually down the wall, because otherwise it is, I guess, just like a flat surface. So at the start of chapter 30 here, that's what we see her do. Super carefully, so that she doesn't kind of collapse the wall, she basically makes a small foothold. She kind of brings kind of little blocks out of the wall to make a foothold, just big enough to put the ball of her foot on. And then once that's stable, she makes another one and slowly makes her way down. And I like the description of this, that it is a sort of like slower process than you would think. Like Toph or an Aang will be able to do this like boom, 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 boom. But this is her first time doing something like this. So of course it's a much more careful process. Even though there's the desperation that's happening here, she doesn't want to just collapse a building to get down as kind of quickly as possible. But eventually she makes her way down, but immediately someone says, stop right there. Arrow comes through the air and she gets stuck to the wall by her hair. Someone has fired an arrow at her. Now immediately we see Xuan arrives and is like, oh, stop. There's an archer. They have a guard there. I think his name is revealed in a few pages to be Len. He's kind of like the guard of the apothecary here. So Xuan helps Jin get off the wall with the arrow through her hair. And she's like, are you hurt? No. He does notice that her hand is hurt, and he gets really angry about this. There's some interesting stuff here where you really see how much the two kind of care about each other at this point in time. I don't know what I would have done if he hurt you. And then when he sees that her hand is cut from before, from the previous chapter, from the tile, how did this happen? You said it didn't hurt. What happened? And she's really taken aback by how intense he is about this. Like the mere concept of Jin being hurt, he's really all over it. It's interesting. He then asks, like, how did you get down? And she says, like, oh, I used earthbending. And like, and he notes that, oh, you did that. Like, your earthbending has improved. So she gets a just pure compliment from him at the same time. So she finally gets to ask the question, I need your mother. Is she here? Xuan reveals, no, she is not here. What has happened is that they came and took my mother. They seized what they could from the shelves and destroyed the shop, accusing her of trafficking illegal ingredients. It was the Dai Li. They betrayed the city. They're the collaborators with the Fire Nation. So the full scope of what exactly has happened here, how this has all come about, gets kind of revealed here to a certain degree. There's still a few bits and pieces that still need to come out that they don't know about, but they're gradually beginning to realize how crazy the full situation is here. So yeah, this is when he says, reveals the guard's name is Len. You can return to your post. Then he starts to bandage her hands, of course. She doesn't want him to do this because like it's a desperate situation, but he's like, no, we can't have your kind of hands getting infected or anything like that. We have to clean this up. He says that, okay, my mom's not here, but I will come with you and do what I can to help. I don't think I'm going to be able to do much, but maybe I can help a little bit until an actual doctor can arrive. Now, obviously, the idea is neither of them really know the full extent of like how bad what has happened to Gong Gong is, but this is the best they can do in this sort of situation here. So yeah, he starts to try and fix up her hands as best that he can, and then out of nowhere we get this kind of almost like humorous moment, especially because at the start of 31, the way what the reveal actually is here. What are you doing? Someone shrieks accusingly from the door. I turn my head to see an older girl standing there with her arms folded over her chest, glaring at me like I'm an unruly trespasser. And it's like, ooh, who's this? What's happening here? And I don't think you really have enough context to have any sense for what this is just from this chapter, but like the fun reveal at the next chapter is actually kind of a nice moment in terms of like, I'll bring this up when I do 31, the end of this chapter, of just like the accusation here of Xuan, but that's the kind of setup that we have here. So Jin's going to get her hands bandaged, and then they're going to head back to Gong Gong. But things are, like I said, beginning to build up here. Will it be an easy trip back? Has anything happened back at the house in the meantime? Because like Longshot is injured, but not too badly, but he can't really walk around. And then something pretty disastrous has happened with Gong Gong, but we don't know the full extent of it. So everything kind of going wrong here for Jin, that like the idea that like just a few chapters ago it felt like we were this close to maybe cracking open the case of like maybe trying to get Susu back, but now who knows when we're going to get back to that, because Ba Sing Se is in absolute chaos. It's a really cool way that the main plot just completely takes over the sort of side story that the rest of the book kind of has been. This just becomes this major crossover at this point in time. But you can still see that there is this story happening with the other characters. Like, we primarily followed Team Avatar. They managed to escape, but we didn't really get to see the stories of what actually happened to the people in Ba Sing Se when the city fell. And now we kind of see that, the sense of like the violence on the streets, that the people fleeing from, soldiers, from tundra tanks. The idea that there is one line of dialogue from one of these chapters where it's mentioned that like if you go down that alleyway, there are guards down there and they'll just shoot fire at you for like no reason. So it is like they are kind of killing people in the streets is kind of like the implication. So super, super dangerous. And it speaks to like Jin making like these trips out in the middle of all of this because she has to help Longshot and then to help Gong Gong. This is what she has to do. And it's so like important that like she had the Silver Fang training, because otherwise her bending wouldn't be at the level to where she'd be able to do some of the stuff that she's kind of doing here. But I do like that they're still getting across the idea that like Jin is like not really anywhere near being like a master earthbender. She's got to a point now where she can do some impressive things and she's beginning to like experiment, but she is still like nowhere near the level of some of our main characters. And I do like that they basically keep that up kind of as the series goes on. Jin doesn't become this like master combatant by the end of this book, but she can do some impressive things otherwise. So very, very interesting stuff across these chapters here, where like the emotion from Smellerbee about what happened to Longshot is really noticeable in like the first chapter that we covered here. That comes across really strong of just how much they care about each other, especially I think because Jet has died. Those two cannot lose each other after this. That connection is even more important now than ever. I do perhaps sort of wonder, like, might it have been an interesting point to maybe reveal they are kind of romantically involved, just to add a little bit of something else, but either way, it still, I think, really, really strongly works overall. And then yeah, the reunion with Chuen is nice, and you can see again that this is also a bond that has actually got to a point where it really is super important for both of them. I think right now you can tell that a lot of maybe his reaction over the course of the book is that you almost get the sense that he's kind of maybe had a crush on her, like maybe the entire time, because he is confident in so many situations, but then he actually does kind of get nervous around her from time to time, and you can see that she's gradually beginning to feel that way about him as well. So like the actual main romance in the book is actually, I think, being done pretty well as well. So yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this group of chapters as the chaos takes over the story. But otherwise, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.